Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. Sanani Mangisa, ex-Olympian. And we are talking quite a few things this week. SASCOC, the Olympic readiness, our athletes, what money looked like for Sanani back in the day.
Way back when.
Way back when, yeah. And then the money side in terms of just the Olympic model itself and how that balances out. Some sponsors coming on as well to, maybe give the Olympians a nice pair of shoes, some nice kit.
Yeah.
And
And some
then,
money.
but yeah, true. And then also Rule 40, how athletes, in terms of their own personal value, how that works out in terms of you and your own individual sponsors. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. Anyway, let's start at the top. Sans. SASCOC says they're going to send 200 athletes to the Olympics this year. How's that going to happen?
So I think we need to dial it back a little bit, is in that predominantly as South Africa, we've always sent what we considered medal contenders.
Yeah.
And we filled the team that was representative of the country.
Yeah.
And we said that we selected a team, women, black, white. We try to represent the demographics. But what is more important is that we didn't take everyone who qualified.
Yeah.
Which goes slightly against the Olympic Charter of competing at the Olympics. So it's always been a sore point in terms of you can qualify, but are you actually going to go? So now the federations basically came together at a council meeting, and then they just said, we resolve to send everyone who qualifies. And that everyone.
So that happened in 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, back end of 2019. And now everyone's going to the Olympics, which is the way it should be. And there's a bigger play at it. The Olympics are about the spirit of competing. You shouldn't only take medal hopefuls this year. There's also a long-term view on it. So if I'm taking some people who maybe won't get out of the heat this year, but the long-term view is Paris, LA, 2024, 2028, could they come good for us?
So give people the experience of actually going to an Olympic Games, figure out what it's about, understand the level of competition, and then come back in 4 years' time, and hopefully you'll be primed and ready to go.
Yeah, because I've always said this, the lights are bright. I describe Olympics as the lights are bright at your first one, because there's a lot going on. There's Olympic Village, there's opening ceremonies, there's actually your games that you're there to compete in. But at the same time, there's a lot going. There's a magnitude, you bump into Roger Federer at the dining room, and those kind of things play into. And this is a guy. This is the guy this is the guy that you watch at an Open any other Sunday. French Open, Wimbledon. But now you and him are there to do exactly the same thing. So I always say your first Olympics, the lights are bright. So we need to consider that as well.
All right, so now we've got 200 athletes going to the Olympics this year. It was 183 in 2016, which at that time even was a record anyway.
Yeah.
But now we've got 200. It doesn't really matter. Now they're basically saying we will have the money to foot the bill. But financial position, the last time that SASCOC released any sort of financials was 2019. And even then, it's not financials that is in public knowledge, right? It's only because there were reports, there was internal ructions, even Barry Hendricks himself was suspended for a time, and so on and so on. So at that point, there was 7 million rand in debt. They were not making any money. Apparently, according to that Carte Blanche interview yesterday, they are no longer in debt.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Look, I'm more confident now than I was 5-6 months ago in the SASCOC board and turning things around. We've seen a couple of sponsors, which we'll dive into now, come on board. In terms of confidence just in the overall setup, probably, I sat on the Athletes Commission, SASCOC Athletes Commission for about a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm more confident now in the board than I was, when I was on the commissions with those ongoings and really not protecting the athletes, or really not, I always felt like we weren't putting the athletes first.
Yeah.
So I'm more confident now than I was then to say, actually, we might be able to take 200 athletes.
You went to an Olympics, right? You went to two of them, 2008 and 2012. I guess you basically got to do that, figure it out the first time, and then second time you're more prepared.
Yeah.
But let's say from an athlete perspective, right? Because a lot of people don't know what athletes actually go through, right? What did athlete preparation for you look like in terms of just, going to an Olympics? Like, what were the financial ramifications? Were you working? Were you, on a bursary? Were you how did you, because I know that some athletes have to, pay their way.
Yeah.
That had to happen in 2016. It's happened in all previous Olympics actually.
So there's a fine line between your federation
Yeah.
prepping you
Yeah.
for competition,
Yeah.
and then assistant in a, call it Olympic here from SASCOC prepping you.
Yeah.
So 2008, I was on the OPEX program. A lot of us were. So OPEX program is the Operation Excellence program by SASCOC.
Yeah.
So what happens then is that your federation will prep you, but also what happens then for SASCOC will give you a monthly stipend for support.
Okay.
So,
but what do you mean by your federation will prep you? Does your federation then also give you a monthly stipend, or
no,
what does that mean?
I mean, for us, it was basically SA Hockey paying for our tours, or us trying to chip in to tours that some years we didn't have sponsors, so we had to pay our way. Okay. That's when your varsities chip in and support you. So it was, lots of us have jobs. It's a known thing that lots of athletes have other jobs besides, especially for the smaller sports, have other jobs besides what their main job is hockey as well. So we paid for some tours, we got funded from some tours, we had sponsors on others, and we didn't. So there's a bit of that, but then also SASCOC also got a responsibility to prep an Olympic team.
Yeah.
So Operation Excellence is basically a funding program that pays for athletes to be prepared.
Yeah.
So it's a select group of athletes, not everyone is on it, who will go to Olympics. Select group of athletes who will get a monthly stipend from SASCOC, and that money will help you prepare. So make sure you go to physio, make sure that you're not hampered by having to do other work.
You're right.
You can focus on the main thing.
All right.
And so Operation Excellence is that. So also, but then, if we're talking an Olympic Games as a 4-year cycle, before that, SASCOC will come in maybe 2 years before.
Yeah.
And SA Hockey or your federation has to prep you before that. Then you still go to World Cups, you still go to other tournaments around the world, they're paying for that.
Right.
So there's a responsibility on the federation, and then there's a responsibility on SASCOC when it comes closer to Commonwealth Games or on Olympic Games. So they need to also foot the bill. So it's everyone needs to chip in basically to have a fully ready athlete by the time we go to an Olympic Games.
Okay. Right. So basically we're sending 200 athletes this year.
Yeah.
According to SASCOC, or according to Barry Hendricks, the cost per athlete is at least 35,000 Rand. According to SA Hockey and the men's team who are trying to raise money, they are talking about a 45 to 50,000 Rand per athlete. They need about 7 million Rand. Where's the money going to come from?
Conservatively, that's just at 35,000. There's more costs that come into it, obviously. And then we're looking at your SASCOC money, basically from sponsors.
Yeah.
We're looking at Sports and Recreation South Africa, our government money.
Yeah.
We're looking at the IOC grant, and then you're looking at lottery money as well. So those 4 pools of money are probably going to come into a pot, and then that's what's going to send the athletes to Tokyo.
Right.
So I'm hoping that they're going to sign more sponsors. We've seen Mr. Price come on board. We've seen Planet Fitness come on board. We've seen Veldskoen come on board.
Yeah.
So those are, predominantly call it probably part partnership, part cash and part value in kind of sponsorships. So we're needing the big one. If you can get an airline to sponsor.
Yeah, because that's the majority of the cost, right? Is the travel. I would think that at some point someone is going to come up and say, guys,
hopefully,
we'll send you to the Olympics because it's a national
pride. For sure. You're hoping someone's going to come to the party, and also just to make it as travel efficient as possible for the athletes, because you just want to go from point A to point B as efficiently as possible, not taking toll on your body, not exposing yourself to COVID around the world.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if that you contain it, if you go from point A to point B directly, you contain any kind of risk of exposure. So there's that as well. But if we go back to the money of it, it's not cheap to send an Olympic team.
Yeah.
But I'm more hopeful now than I was, as I said, 10 months ago or 6-7 months ago, that they'll find the money.
Right. So if we're in a situation now, right, where SASCOC is stable, they have a new board, they have leadership which seems to be quite stable. We also have a situation where we have some sponsors, Veldskoen, Mr. Price, Mr. Price, who are going to make
The
tailored
kit.
kits that will actually fit this time,
Oh, gosh.
and we won't have
We actually
pajamas.
should we'll have an episode where we pull out all, call it 2, 4,
Yeah.
8, 12, 16, and the different kids, and we'll have a laugh because
goodness.
it's been an
Wow.
adventure. And I'll give you some backstories of how, we had to bring tailors on board to
Wait,
help
Did
us
you
tailor.
guys, when you went to the Olympics, right, on your side, so in terms of athlete preparation and support, right, so SASCOC would give you guys, because you touched on this before,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, so SASCOC would give you guys some funding, even 2 years prior, Commonwealth Games, and then your own federation would also prep you. We have a situation now where it's a bit of a heartbreaking one. We were talking about it prior.
Yeah.
But in terms of athlete support, are they like psychologists who help you guys? Because Luvo Manyonga right now apparently is going through a bit of a bad situation at the moment. We know the history he's got. We're not going to repeat it. It's unnecessary. But what happens in terms of mentally preparing athletes? Because you even spoke about the sending athletes to one Olympics knowing that they're not going to medal is mental preparation for the next one. What level of mental support is provided to athletes prior to them going to Olympics?
In my time, not a lot.
Yeah, in your time.
I'm hoping it's changed now, but not a lot in my time. You had to use your own individual resources.
Wow.
And to make sure you're ready and prepped. But once you're in that, call it pre-game period, post-game period, there are some resources, the kind of physios you can go see, those kind of things. So and if you go to a SASCOC camp, because what usually does is Team SA has about 2 camps or 3 camps before, where the whole of Team SA, and that's where you get to fit your kit. As well, you get to give your sizes, see what fits and what doesn't fit. So those kind of camps will hopefully take place, and I'm hopeful that because mental health conversations have progressed over the last couple of years, we're providing that to our athletes.
Right. No, that's excellent. I think it's an important one. It can't be downplayed how important this is. You're also in a COVID year where everyone has sort of been struggling and been in one, a level of isolation. 2, frustration is higher because you're not able to train, you're not able to go where you need to go. I mean, I was reading a story about Wade Finnegan having to try and figure out when he's going to go over to the States to start really getting into the business end of his prep, because he's basically been stuck in SA, and COVID protocol has meant that South African citizens are...
It's been tough.
So mentally speaking, we need mental health support for all of our athletes a lot more now than we ever did before.
And those are the part of the readiness of athletes we've got to consider, is that how did athletes qualify? Some athletes were due to qualify when the world closed, basically. So some athletes are only going to finish qualifying in the next couple of weeks. So some athletes haven't qualified. We need to look at the readiness of Team SA as itself, who of those athletes have qualified and what support they're getting to get to the games in their best shape, mentally, physically. Those kind of things matter, because in terms of, I don't think the playing fields will ever be level, that sport. But in terms of people going through something that's similar globally, it's this Olympics. So everyone's been in lockdown. Everyone's had to find a way to train. So, it's the athlete now going, how best have we utilized that time, that space, and the resources we had or didn't have to best prepare. So I think it's somehow going to level playing fields, but somehow how it's going to expose them as well, that some athletes really had more support during this time than others.
And another thing that I thought of while we were talking just now is the COVID protocol.
Obviously, we've seen the ISC regulations that say athletes will be tested every day. And if you're in close contact, you'll be tested every day with the athletes, but any support staff will be every other day. So even that, there's an outlay of huge money there. Lots of money, and that's where we see the Olympics that have gone from, call it a 12.4 billion US dollars to about 15 billion. Those are the kind of things, those protocol measures that have taken it there. But I think the support now for athletes is, as we say, more crucial than ever in terms of COVID protocols. And then something I want to touch on, I think that's worth explaining for a lot of people, is a few people ask, why doesn't private sector come on board in terms of, backing athletes and backing, the federations? You can't, Olympics is a closed space in terms of sponsorship and athletes. Mm-hmm. So you either sponsor the NOC or you an Olympic sponsor, one of the two. So mm-hmm. your own personal sponsors kind of fall away when it's Olympic time. So there's a period, sometimes it's 45 days outside of Olympics, mm-hmm. before Olympics, and 45 days on the other side of the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you a story, a quick one.
Yeah.
Investec sponsored the SA women's hockey team in 2012. Right. And before that, billboards across Joburg, Sandton, Gautrain, and all that stuff. Yeah. They had to come down. So literally any affiliation with that team in terms of that period of before Olympics and after Olympics, it's like a closed period. Yeah. It has to go. So any ads that were placed, any affiliation, because it was always like, certain sponsor would wants to pay for this team to go or for these athletes to go, but they want some branding. No, you can't, because we'll take your money, but you can't have any branding associated if you don't want to, you have to, if you're going to brand, you're going to have to sponsor the whole Olympic team.
Okay, but who does this benefit? Because it doesn't benefit the athletes.
It doesn't, but it's, it's always been, and there's a rule around it called Rule 40. Yeah. It's a controversial rule amongst athletes because athletes would like to use their image, their sponsors, and their likeliness to make money over the time. Yeah. But at the same time, Olympics wants to protect that space from ambush marketing as well. So it's quite a fine line, because you've got this Rule 40 in terms of performance apparel, performance gear can stay. Yeah. So as a hockey player, your hockey stick, your tennis racket, as a runner, your spikes stay. Yeah. But the kit goes. So last night we saw the 4x100 men's in Puma kit. Yeah. That will fall away for Olympics,
and take on whatever kit sponsor, Mr. Price that South Africa. Wow. Apparel.
So it's always been contentious, because athletes are going, that's my image, that's my likeliness, I'd like to make money off it as well.
Absolutely.
So over the years, Rule 40 has changed slightly. Yeah. And then I think on this video we'll pin the whole copy of Rule 40 as well for people who would like to read it. So now it's gotten more, there's going to be an interesting in terms of, some athletes have gone as far as, could I tattoo my sponsor on my arm for that period, or something like that. Because it's going to become an interesting space, because some of the Rule 40 has leveled out. They're not as strict as they were, call it 5-6 years ago, or at the last Olympics, because athletes have protested and gone, guys, we have to start making some sort, or my sponsors have helped me get here. Think about an individual sponsor. Guys who've got Wade van Niekerk, who's got Audi, he's got Richard Mille, he's got Adidas. Those guys have footed the bill to help him be the athlete he is now. But now you saying no association or no adverts or no brand to. And I think even when you come back from Olympics, there's a period where your sponsors can't. You can go visit their offices and smile with your medal, but there can't be an ad on TV that says, so those kind of things. It's interesting to discuss who does it benefit, who I understand, because then a Visa and a MasterCard battle it out, because a Visa is an official sponsor of the Olympics. Yeah. So now if you get MasterCard, so those kind of, you've got to protect the sponsors, yes, but also the athletes have to, these are the images, likelihood imagery.
I would think that some sort of in between compromise where an athlete who is off track, can have some level of, I mean, come on, you can't punish an athlete for wearing a cap.
And I hear what you go. I mean, we've had moments where within the village, we had to fight over shoes. We've had sponsors in the past who've made less than par shoes. They're just not comfortable running shoes, let's say, and you had to wear them. But yet you've got a personal sponsor from a Nike or an Adidas, and you've wanted to wear your own shoes. Yeah. But you get a slap on the wrist walking around the village in your non-SASCOC sponsored shoes. And those are the kind of things like, who, as you say, who does it really benefit? Because I've known sponsors who say, we'll foot the bill to help, but we also want some sort of, acknowledgement.
Yeah.
If you look at the SA women's hockey team, the reason they're not looking for money now is they've got Supergroup as a sponsor.
Yeah.
And the men don't have a sponsor. The
Yeah.
Supergroup will, cease to have association with that team at a certain point.
Yeah.
And then, after Olympics, get back and.
Yeah.
So it's
going to be an interesting one with these Olympics because of just the advent of how much social media has grown as a medium in the last maybe 4-8 years. Influencer culture was not really a thing in 2016. Now these guys are big social media personalities. You could look at fines even for people doing stuff on social media which they never thought they could get fined for. It's
but also it's those kind of conversations become interesting. As an athlete, do I just wing it with my sponsor and get a slap on the wrist and a fine?
Yeah.
Or no one's going to take your gold medal away if you medal.
Exactly.
So or do keep within the rules?
To be honest, do you think SASCOC is really going to kick someone out of the Olympic Village for posting a selfie which potentially makes the athlete $1 million?
Yeah.
And they'll pay that 5,000 rand fine.
And those rules are strict. When it comes to social media, there's a whole social media document on that attaches to Rule 14. It's part of that. When you can tweet, what you can't tweet, when you don't run to social media, when you've got gripes with your federation and those kind of things. So it's quite sticky, but it's probably a conversation to be had now. We are seeing more athletes have a voice. We're seeing more athletes understand their worth.
Yeah.
We're seeing athletes demand what they're worth. So is it coming to a point where the Olympics, how much money do they make from sponsors?
Yeah.
Do you start sharing that part with the athletes, that medal?
Well, let's have this conversation then, because think about it this way. We talked about how much the Olympics has cost.
Yeah.
Greece has an 11 billion, was it 11 million euro stadium that was built for the Olympics in Greece, sitting there not being used. Rio Olympic stadiums not being used. I've had a look at, so what could the Olympic model be to make it financially viable for everyone? I mean, as far as cost, apparently Japan has been working on a way to make this the most sustainable Olympics ever, because they don't want to have the issue of white elephant stadiums and so on and so on. So if we look at the business model of the Olympics, right, it's not dissimilar to what global, like the FIFA World Cup and so on and so on. Yeah. They would say, okay, we're going to bring this thing to your country. We'll give you the hosting rights, but you must have constructed a big and fancy stadium or stadia. If you're going to have facilities, they must be up to some sort of standard, must be able to host a certain number of people, and you have to throw in a certain amount of money on your own to host this thing, and then obviously the sponsors will come in like Nike and Coca-Cola and the big McDonald's and all of those guys, Visa, MasterCard, and they would put their money behind the Olympics as official sponsor to bankroll it, right? But athletes go there, a lot of them, for instance, boxing. You can't be a professional boxer and go to the Olympics. So therefore you don't have any sort of funding, any real world sort of funding, right?
Amateurish,
But you are the star of that event.
Yeah, you got to get.
Why are you not getting? You know what I mean? A gold medal is not enough for someone who's spent 8 years.
Exactly, some people will come back and be able to monetize a gold medal.
Yeah.
But some people won't.
Yeah.
And that's something actually we'll look at later.
Yeah.
The projections of, call it the four in the pool, and how their lives went differently, all four of them, and then compare it to call it Sizwe and then the rowing four, how their life, some of them, some of them, it's how you also, that's what athletes rely on, how you then monetize your gold medal afterwards.
Yeah. Because honestly, your performance as an athlete is what earns you money, right?
Yeah.
You spend all of the time training in between, but that performance is what, it's like Floyd Mayweather can fight 10 fights in 10 years, but he's got so much money because all of that effort and time put into practice for that one fight should be monetized at that point. So how do you justify?
But then I throw again at you the spirit of Olympics.
Yeah.
We're going to have to touch on that in terms of, do we change it to be like, it's a commercial channel now for athletes, or do we go competing at that level still maintains the spirit of the Olympics it's for competition, it's not for profit. And it depends what which side of the coin you want to look at it on. Some people really believe that the athletes are the star of the games and they should be remunerated. Some people believe that it's still it's the spirit of competing. And this discussion, a good discussion on both sides.
There's things like, for instance, on the athletics side, world athletics, and you look at things like Diamond League, which has made athletics a lot more profitable for athletes at that level. But we can always go into that later. It's just, there's a very interesting conversation to be had around global federations like the IOC, like FIFA. We had a very interesting conversation with the UEFA a few weeks ago. These types of mother bodies are going to get challenged.
For sure. It's going to come up more often.
It's going to be very interesting to see how they pivot and adjust to modern times. Where athletes know what their value is.
I think the voice of athletes has become a lot louder, a lot clearer about what they want and what they won't stand for in terms of, pay me what I'm worth or pay me, full stop. So we're going to see a lot of these, as you said, business model changing slightly, demanding of bigger cash prizes in the bigger pool, bigger money splits in the guys that make a lot of money, your FIFAs, your UEFAs. We want a little bit more of the money as athletes because we're helping you make that money.
Yeah, absolutely. You are the
star of the show.
The star of the show,
literally.
The athletics is cool, but you are the star of the show as the athlete. And South Africa, your athletes are going to the Olympics. Last night, they were brilliant.
Even the commentators were surprised.
The commentators were shook.
They were like,
guys,
South Africa didn't make it.
It was.
They actually won.
They did, and let's be honest. People are saying that South Africa doesn't have a chance.
No.
Jamaica and America weren't there. Listen, it's a COVID year. Nobody knows what the hell is going to happen.
And no one knows who's good. And I said this quite often when I'm asked medal contenders.
Yeah.
I said, okay, guys, there's going to be the normal medal contenders, the guys who are performing well. Their times are good for the year. The times are dipping, but there's also. You haven't seen some people perform since 2019 effectively on a global stage with everyone.
Yeah.
We've had competitions here and there. Some countries can't be at, some countries can be at. So overall, I'm thinking might be the underdogs.
Yeah.
Coming guys we've never seen, 19-year-olds we haven't seen compete. They're going to come out strong.
Akani Simbene, 100 meters champion. Let's go. We will see you there. I'm very confident the gent is going to deliver this year. And we're done. Episode 2 of Cash and Sport Olympics Talk with Sanani Mangisa. SASCOC, I think they're ready. I think our athletes are going to look good this year. The drip is going to be dripping. And I think this year South Africa's really going to do well. I'm expecting a lot.
I think we'll be surprised. I think there's a few athletes that might surprise us if they don't get caught up by the big stage. I'm looking forward to it. I think the athletes have really, some questions have come up. Should we be having Olympics in a pandemic? But some athletes have really gone. Let's bring some joy to the world, and we're going to do that on a big stage, showcasing our abilities. So I'm excited for it. 10 weeks time. I'm excited for it, but let's see what our athletes have got.
And we are out.